My daughter slid a stack of bills across the kitchen table and said if I couldn't cover the new costs I'd need to tour assisted living, then CC'd the whole family like I was a problem to be filed. I felt the sting steadied my coffee cup and let 65 years of getting through hard days remind me quiet isn't weak, it's how you line up your facts. Before noon, I restored my name on the smart lock and signed owner on a delivery tablet. The receipts not my temper would speak for me. That was only the first move. The house itself would answer every insult before this was over. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're watching from, or drop a 1 if this hits home. I looked up at her, the little girl I once carried on my shoulders down the Greenbelt after Sunday service at St. Andrew, the one who used to bargain for a cherry dip cone if she promised to sit still in the pew. Now her face was tight, efficient, as if I were a package she needed to return before lunch. The kitchen light hummed. Pecan leaves tapped the east window. Thayer shifted in his chair without meeting my eyes. Celine set a neat stack of envelopes in front of me. Taxes are up. Insurance is up. Utilities too. If you can't increase your share by the first mom, we'll need to look at other arrangements. Manager tone. Decision already printed. I wrapped both hands around my cup and let the heat settle my fingers. The wall clock kept a steady tick, a cardiologist's metronome. I slid the top bill free and read like a book account number, escrow jump premium hike. My voice sounded thinner than I like. I pay you every month. Not enough anymore. Her nail tapped the red circle around the new total. We can't keep carrying the house and you. It isn't fair. Thayer cleared his throat in the way of men who hate conflict but enjoy the results. It's just tough out there. I could have told her the history of this roof in a paragraph, the down payment after her father's union buyout the weekend. I painted her room yellow because she said sunshine helped you wake up happy, the refinance when rates dipped. I could have told her how many times I covered a semester, a car repair, a copay. Instead, I let the clock count 10 clicks. My silence wasn't surrender, it was a ledger. Celine slid one more sheet across the table. I toured a few senior communities near here. They handle transportation and medication. You'd have your own room, activities. Communities landed like a quiet lock. I watched the steam lift from my coffee and become nothing at all. My phone pinged. The screen lit my palm. Subject line, assisted living tour. Monday, 10:00 a.m. A placement coordinator's name. The recipients row ran long. Selene, Thayer, my son Bram, even Lumen. CC everyone who might file a mother where she takes the least space. I opened it, skimmed the bullet points, complimentary lunch assessment on arrival financing options, then closed the screen with my thumb. I wrote the words on the inside of my skull, subject time sender. Facts travel better than feelings. Sneakers squeaked at the doorway. Morning Lumen said backpack already on. She read my face first, the phone second. You'll be late, Celine said. I'm biking. Lumen answered, eyes still with me. I'm okay, I told her, turning the phone face down. Focus on your class. She gave me the smallest nod a granddaughter can give and still be called brave. The hinge sighed when the door shut behind her. Celine exhaled as if a window had opened. So what's it gonna be? I placed the bills in a squared stack and drew a slim notebook from my purse. Date, time, ultimatum at kitchen table, dollar figure exactly as printed. Assisted living tour CC all. I underlined CC. Ink is quiet, but it does not forget. Thayer stood. We really do have to make a plan. It sounded like apology wearing a tie. You'll have my answer, I said. This week, Selene added. The air conditioner kicked on. Lemon cleaner rose off the counter. I remembered Celine at 9 gripping the back of my shirt in the grocery store because the world felt too big. I remembered the night Lumen was born, how my daughter leaned into my shoulder without a word. The subject line still glowed somewhere under my breastbone. I rinsed my cup and set it down without clatter. No lecture, no plea. I made a new tab in the ledger I keep in my head. Increases in Tarrant County property tax, homeowners insurance spikes after hail seasons, the way utilities edge up and don't edge back. Numbers behave even when people don't. I took a manila folder from the sideboard where the paint chips live. On the tab, I wrote House Archive. I slipped my notebook inside. My hands had steadied. Selene checked the clock. I have a 9:30. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I won't. They moved toward the door. Thayer gave me half a nod. Selene paused at the threshold. Text me if you're confused by anything. I'm not confused. Her chin lifted a fraction. I could see the little girl who once asked if God could hear whispering. So what's it going to be? The clock ticked and ticked. I looked from the second hand to my notes. I slid the bills back across the table, not rudely, not softly. Precisely, I heard you. The room went still. Even the unit in the attic seemed to wait for the next line. I carried the folder to the drawer by the fridge and laid it facing forward. The label glowed like a small brass nameplate. When the door closed and their car backed down the drive, the house exhaled into the kind of quiet that gives you back your own outline. Sun laid a bright stripe across the table. I opened the folder and added a last line beneath today's notes, respect ledger, balance due. Then I closed it, returned it to the drawer. People only open on Thanksgiving and rinse the cup once more, this time for me. Outside, Keller was already warming late summer air pushing through the screen when I cracked the back door. A mower droned 2 yards over. Someone started a smoker for college ball. This is my street, my kitchen, my name on the light bill, long before anyone learned to sign theirs in cursive. The pecan out front shook its green fists and let the day begin without asking permission. At 6:40 that Sunday morning, the sound came sharp and foreign click pause, then a short beep at the front door. I sat up in bed and waited the kind of waiting you learn from storms. The keypad glowed soft blue against the wood I'd polished for years. A moment later, my phone buzzed. Security update Selene's text read, "Use the guest code. I'll share it monthly. Guest." I stared at the word until it blurred. In my own house, a place where I once folded her socks fresh from the dryer, where her father traced her first steps down this very hall, I was now labeled as guest. I brewed coffee, the sound of the drip steadying my breath. Thayer padded through in slippers, laptop already under his arm. He muttered something about catching a meeting eyes glued to the screen. Not a word about the code, not a glance at me. I opened the lock app, scrolled, and saw it clear. Primary owner Selene. Underneath, guest Eudora access limited to 6 a.m., 9 p.m. The sting burned sharp but brief. I pressed the screenshot button. Click. Evidence saved. I tapped again, exporting the audit log to my email. No raised voices. No confrontation. Just facts lined up like pearls. By the second cup of coffee, my hands had steadied. I opened the manufacturer portal, typed in the original admin email I'd used when the system was installed 5 years ago. Security questions, mother's maiden name, first car model. I entered each one, steady fingers, no rush. The system blinked green. Welcome, primary owner. I restored my role, slid Selene's access back to secondary. The system automatically pinged both of us with a permissions-changed email. I closed the laptop before the whoosh of sent mail had faded. The house hummed quiet again. Lumen drifted in, hair tied back, earbuds dangling. She poured coffee into a thermos, then paused as the faint click of the lock reset echoed down the hall. Her eyes flicked toward me. I lifted a brow. Homework due. Always, she said, smiling a little. She read more in my tone than in my words. Then she was gone, the back door closing soft behind her. The morning stretched until the doorbell rang, a brisk chime followed by a knock. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. A delivery driver in a blue vest stood there, badge clipped, neat Jada. She balanced a box with both arms. Delivery for Archer household, she said. Before I could answer, Selena's voice carried from the living room. Leave it with the tenant if we're not home. Tenant. The word sat heavy like damp laundry left too long. Jada glanced at me, unsure. I can sign, I said evenly. She handed me the tablet. The signature field blinked, labeled recipient role. My hand moved steady across the glass, Eudora Hawthorne owner. The screen beeped. Receipt sent to Selene, Thayer, Eudora. The body cam on Jada's vest blinked red, capturing the exchange. She nodded politely. "Have a good day, ma'am." Inside, I printed the receipt, stapled it neatly behind yesterday's notes, and slid both into the manila folder marked House Archive. I downloaded the roll change log, dropped it onto a small USB stick, and placed it in the drawer. Paper beats talk. Paper stays. The printer whirred just as Celine walked in, phone in hand. Her brow furrowed. "Mom, why does the receipt say owner?" I set my cup down so it didn't rattle. Because it's accurate. The room stilled quiet enough that I could hear the printer tray click into place. The printer was still warm from the receipt when noon rolled around and my phone chimed. A Google sheet appeared, polite green cells stacked like a tidy fence. At the top in bold, someone had typed my name beside a neat title, Primary Funder. Columns marched across mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, each row pre-filled for 6 months, as if my future had been budgeted without me. In the notes column, there it was in plain daylight, mom covers to keep the house stable. I set the phone on the table so my hands could be steady. A kettle hissed. Outside, cicadas droned in the live oaks. Inside, I read every line as if it were a contract pushed across a counter. Exploited is a loud word. What I felt was smaller, colder, a whisper that tried to tell me who I was. I refused to repeat it. Bram pinged the family chat just until contracts renew. It was dressed as teamwork, like we were all pulling the same rope. I answered with one sentence, "Remove my name from Primary Funder." Then I opened the Sheets menu, exported a PDF, and captured the version history names, timestamps, the edits that quietly crowned me banker. I took screenshots of the place where ownership and funding had been braided together, as if they were the same thing. They are not. The phone lit again. Bram called. I let it ring twice, then answered. His voice was upbeat with a thinness around the edge. "We're a team, Ma. It's just cash flow. You know how quarters end." I slid my ledger closer and clicked my pen. "What is your monthly shortfall?" I asked. He hesitated. A number arrived clean and confident. I wrote it down. Then he corrected himself, shaved a little off, said one client had paid early. I wrote that number too beside the first. We moved through pleasant words. "Appreciate you, you're the glue-like furniture pads under heavy legs." He said just this month. I kept my voice level. "Then the sheet won't need my name." There was a pause long enough to hear the wall clock count. "I'll talk to Celine," he said. "Do that," I replied, and ended the call before either of us started explaining feelings that didn't belong in accounting. A voicemail bubble appeared seconds later. Just this month, Bram repeated softer. I saved the message, used the phone's transcript, emailed it to myself with the subject line, Bram shortfall version, AB. I filed the email in a folder named Money Attribution. Paper beats talk. Paper stays. From the hallway, the printer woke with its small mechanical cough. A sheet curled into the tray and waited like a flag that hadn't been claimed. I didn't touch it. I angled my phone and took a photo of the page as it lay there. Policyholder Thayer Archer. Insured property, my address. Effective dates. Premium increases in polite percentages. The kind of document that sounds neutral until you know the room it walked into. I went to my room and opened the insurer's portal using the credentials that still arrived in my mail every renewal season. Read-only, but readable, is enough. I downloaded the declarations page, the billing history, and the list of additional insureds. I saved each file with year and month, then copied them to a small USB labeled in my handwriting, Insurance Thayer Holder. The act felt like sweeping my own porch. Quiet work, visible if you knew what to look for. A text from Celine arrived neat and clipped. "We fronted recent hikes. Bram will pay you back. Please approve the sheet." I looked at the words until they were only shapes. Then I typed to remove me. I watched the gray bubble appear, her reply forming, then fading. I set the phone face down. In the kitchen, I rinsed my cup and listened to the house breathe. Air conditioner on a low hum. A distant lawnmower. The printer idled again in Thayer's office, waking to life for someone else's errand. None of it asked me who I was. None of it could answer either. I laid out the manila folders across my bedspread like a Map House Archive money attribution insurance Thayer holder. I slipped the PDF of the sheet, the screenshots, the voicemail transcript behind the latest ledger page. I wrote today's date in blue ink and underlined a single word, boundaries. Not a speech, not a threat, just a line I could see. The phone vibrated one more time with a calendar invite I had sent myself an hour earlier. I accepted it without ceremony. There are meetings worth announcing, and there are meetings worth keeping to yourself. I closed the folders, smoothed my hand over the cardboard, and put them back in the drawer where I keep passports, birth certificates, the photo of my mother at 19 with her whole life before her. The printer hummed behind me. I didn't turn. I already had what I needed. Before dinner, Bram texted a third figure different from both he'd given earlier. I didn't reply. I wrote it on a sticky note and stacked it under the first two, a small staircase of moving math. In the margin, I boxed the 3 numbers and wrote shifting ask. I stepped onto the porch. Heat pressed close. The screen door clicked. Through the glass, I saw the kitchen clock, the grocery list, the smart lock's faint glow. On my nightstand, my old blue checkbook lay open. I didn't write a check. I studied my own handwriting, then slid the book beneath House Archive. Paper becomes a spine when you stack it. Right enough, I underlined boundaries again, then scheduled a meeting no one else needed to know about. I underlined boundaries, closed the drawer, and the next morning at 9:10, I pushed open a glass door that whispered my name in the reflection. Ortega elder law sat between a dentist and a yoga studio off South Lake Boulevard beige brick and a neat row of crepe myrtles. I carried my leather folder House Archive like a book I'd read too many times to misquote. The receptionist slid an intake form across the counter. I signed without a tremor, wrote my address in careful block letters, and set the pen down point first so it wouldn't roll. Before I left the house, Lumen had paused in the hallway and straightened the family photo of her grandfather in his navy suit, a peony pinned crookedly to his lapel. She didn't fuss or mother me. She simply rested her hand on my shoulder the way people do when words would only spill. "Text me if you need a ride," she said, coffee steam curling up between us. I nodded once. We both understood more than we said. The frame held steady as I walked out. Miss Hawthorne. The lawyer's door opened. Maris Ortega was compact, mid-40s sleeves rolled to her elbows, reading glasses perched like a second thought. Her office held 2 chairs that invited the weight a person carries. I set my folder on her desk. The clip clicked like a tiny gavel. We started where grown women start facts. I laid out the deed copies, tax receipts, the insurance declarations page, with Thayer's name sitting where mine should have been. Maris scanned quiet as a librarian, and then she began to speak in clear lanes. In Texas, she said people love to throw around words like tenant and guest, but rights aren't born from a text thread. Your status follows the paper, she said, tapping the deed with her pen. Not the volume of the conversation. She advised me to move communications into writing archive everything and stop having doorstep debates that end in hurt feelings and no record. If someone wants to change your life, she said, make them do it in an email. She suggested a P.O. box for statements, a separate folder for policy documents, and a simple rule printed on a single line at the end of every message. Please reply by email. I wrote it all down. She underlined homestead and explained where it helped and where it didn't. You don't have to win a scene, she added. You just have to keep your footing. What happens if I sell? I asked the question sat like a coin on my tongue. Maris slid a 1-page roadmap across the desk. Title search, disclosures, escrow open, buyer walkthrough, closing. Most of this is dull on purpose, she said. The weight is in the chain of ownership and the tax history. Let the record speak for you. I signed a narrow scope letter authorizing her to coordinate with a title office I knew from years back. The pen made a firm dot at the end of my name. I liked the sound of it. In the parking lot, I sat in my car air conditioner, thrumming, and called the realtor Maris Trusted. Corbin Wells, the voice answered like a man who knows his calendar. I told him what I owned and what I was asking facts, only not a single sentence about Sunday mornings or the way a kitchen can turn courtroom. He scheduled a preliminary walkthrough and asked for county records maintenance logs, appliance serials. I said, check your email in 10 minutes, and went home to make sure he'd have something to open. At my kitchen table, I scanned what I didn't already have as PDFs, named the files with dates and plain words, and sent a clean packet. He replied with a short list of follow-ups and a note I could feel through the screen. You keep a good archive. I took a sip of water and let the compliment pass through me like medicine, not sweet but useful. By early afternoon, my phone pinged. Subject line, prelim clear title. The message was brief, the way truth prefers to arrive. No liens, taxes current, chain clean. Beneath it, Corbin's response. Escrow can open discreetly. Recommend we move before the market cools. My reply was one word, proceed. He wrote back underway and copied the title officer. Nothing loud, just switches flipping in rooms other people hadn't noticed. I left the house again and rented a P.O. box at the Keller post office, where the clerk still remembers my late husband's way of whistling through his teeth. I signed the card, photographed the box number on my phone, and set up mail forwarding for utilities and tax mailers. Back home, I numbered spare keys, photographed the tags, and placed them in a small envelope marked buyer later. I walked the kitchen with a notebook recording model numbers for the dishwasher and the range, then uploaded them to a folder Corbin could share with any serious pair of eyes. The copier in my room hummed as I made one extra set of everything and clipped it with a black binder clip, heavy enough to mean business. I kept my voice unused. Silence fills out its own form, no need for witnesses. When the house was as tidy on paper as it looked in person, I opened a blank email addressed to Celine and Bram. The subject line was plain, House Communications. The body was plainer. Future house matters will be handled in writing. Do not modify locks again. All invoices should be emailed directly to me. I added my new P.O. box at the bottom like a fence post and BCC'd myself. I clicked send and watched the message leave like a small boat with a bright flag. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The refrigerator cycled on. Somewhere down the block, a dog announced the mail truck. My phone stayed quiet. Quiet has a shape. It isn't always kindness, but it can be useful. From the hallway, I lifted the framed photo Lumen had straightened that morning. My husband's smile looked young enough to make a person believe in redo buttons. I set the frame back exactly where she'd left it and pressed the edge until it lined up with the seam of the wainscoting. That kind of small order makes a person strong enough for the larger kind. I took a pencil from the jar by the landline and marked 2 dates on the kitchen calendar in small, firm letters: disclosures, photography. The house has always known who kept it standing. It knows the hands that scrubbed and the checks that cleared. Sooner rather than later, other people would know it too. I slid my folders, House Archive Money Attribution Insurance Thayer Holder, back into the drawer and locked it. The key felt cool and honest in my palm. I stood there for a breath and listened to the quiet, which was not absence, but space. I had filled it with paper. I intended to keep filling it until there was no room left for the story other people liked to tell about me. When I sat down again, a single calendar notification popped up from Corbin Title Order opened. I clicked accept. Outside clouds stacked over the freeway like laundry folded wrong. Inside, I brewed tea and let the kettle sing low. The house would speak for me soon enough. I said the house would speak for me soon enough. By Thursday dusk, it had an audience. Neighbors drifted in with covered dishes and store flowers. Casserole heat rose. Celine's candles made the air lemon sweet. She poured wine and introduced me with a smile that didn't quite touch. This is my mom, she helps when she can. Laughter did a small roll. I stayed by the stainless sink rubbing a water ring until the steel showed my face. By the mantel, where our photo wall pretends years stay straight, Celine gathered a half circle. With taxes and insurance spiking, we keep this place afloat, she said, light as if reading the weather. Heads bobbed. Thayer smiled like someone safe behind a fort he didn't build. I marked the sentence in my head. not on my tongue. I crossed to the buffet and set a manila folder there the way you set out napkins. No flourish, just order. Tabs, deed, taxes, maintenance. In the first, the certified deed my name in courthouse ink. Behind it, county receipts paid on time. Behind that, a decade of contractor invoices, check numbers, paid stamps in red. At the island, a woman in a denim jacket ran her palm along the quartz. Beautiful, did you two redo it? She meant Celine and Thayer. Celine laughed. We did last decade, brutal, cost worth it. The ice maker let go a small avalanche. I kept my eyes on the sink's reflection and lifted one page from maintenance. I slid a single document to the edge of the island, an invoice dated 2009. Billing to Eudora Hawthorne. Materials itemized. At the bottom, my check number, and across the face, paid. I placed it flat, not toward Celine, not toward anyone, toward the truth. The woman's brows rose and fell. She looked at me, then at Celine, who finished her sentence and reached for her glass. No gasp, no scene. That's the mercy of facts, they don't need volume. We keep records, I said, like telling someone where the forks live. I slid the invoice back into its tab and squared the edges. Rooms change temperature without dropping degrees. Talk softened by a notch. Jokes landed with less throw. Someone asked Celine about premiums again. She pivoted to a new hire story. Thayer fetched plates, avoiding my eyes. I rinsed 2 wine glasses and set them upside down to dry. Neighbors filled the air with HOA talk, the pool deck violations, new stickers for the gate. I nodded where it fit and saved my words for paper. The folder sat where I'd placed it, ordinary as salt and pepper. I stepped down the hall to my room. Door closed, 2 minutes alone. I opened my ledger, the same narrow lines I use for garden notes and birthdays. Date, time, event. Kitchen invoice displayed no argument. Outcome. Understanding registered. Host pivoted. Evidence photo saved. I scanned the invoice, named the file 2009 kitchen paid door.pdf, and dropped it into House Archive. When I returned, laughter had found its way back. Lasagna beside green beans, a funeral potato pan showed up as it always does. A neighbor in a polo mentioned the HOA audits. They're cracking down, he said. I smiled like a woman who knows where the warranties live. Records are friendly when you keep them. The sentence landed and stayed. From the corner of my eye, I saw Celine clock the folder and then choose not to look. A friend asked about her team's quarter. Celine stood well in rooms. I had taught the basics. Send the thank you, keep the appointment, write the date where you can see it. Some lessons bend, some endure. Thayer brushed past me to fetch plates. Excuse me, Miss Dorr, he said barely louder than the drawer's scrape. He is not a cruel man. He is a man who benefits from drafts he didn't write. He stacked the plates too high and carried them like a prayer. I caught my reflection in the sink, older than the photos on the wall, truer than the stories tonight. My father used to say, if you can see yourself, you can steer. I suppose that is what I was doing, steering without taking anyone's hands off the wheel. In the living room, the television idled on a weather channel without sound. The 7-day forecast scrolled in colors that said, maybe and maybe not. That's how weeks feel when you're waiting for documents to do their work. Escrow emails had arrived in tidy bursts. I didn't check my phone. Tiles find their place without my watching. By 9, the crowd thinned into hugs and drive safe. I gathered napkins, lighted a candle that had leaned too far, and wiped a ring from the coffee table with a damp cloth. When the door closed behind the last guest, the house exhaled. Celine stood at the island phone in her palm like a stone. Mom, she said, tapping once people misunderstand when you lay out paperwork like that. Her tone tried for light. It didn't quite land. I rinsed the cloth, wrung it dry, and folded it square. People misunderstand when there's no paperwork, I said, setting the cloth by the sink. This way is kinder. She stared at the folder as if it might open on its own. We've been paying a lot lately, she murmured softer now. I nodded once. Both statements could be true. She had paid some lately. I had paid for years. Truth is not a pie that runs out when someone else takes a slice. Thayer set his keys on the counter. HOA sent something around, he said, "Not quite to me. Ownership validation for the pool fobs may be a compliance check." He shuffled the keys, then stopped. "We'll forward it." I dried my hands and let the room be still. "Records are friendly when you keep them," I repeated, and the stainless held my face without a ripple. Gideon was already at the curb when I stepped outside to shake the crumbs from the doormat. Late light slid across the cul-de-sac, warm and square as toast. He lifted a white envelope with the HOA logo stamped in blue. "This landed in my box by mistake," he said. "Figured you'd want it sooner than later." He glanced at the name the way decent people do, making sure before he handed it over. "Appreciate it, Gideon." The mailbox latch clacked when I opened it to set the rest of our mail inside. A breeze carried the clean, chalky smell of new concrete from the corner where they'd repaired a curb. I didn't hurry. On the porch, I slid a butter knife under the flap and eased it open. Inside meeting minutes, a dues notice and one bold line at the top of the roster, owner of record Eudora Hawthorne. Across the street, Celine lifted grocery bags from her trunk. She could read big fonts at 50 paces. I saw her eyes touch the header, then skip away as if the page might burn. I folded the packet once and let it rest in my palm. No performance, just paper doing what paper does. Gideon shifted his weight, still friendly. "You know if they're swapping vendors for the roof inspections this fall?" "Not yet," I said. "Last year was Lone Star Roofing. October 15th, they checked ridge caps and flashed the chimney. 2 minor fixes. Dates and contractor names live in my head the way hymns do ready when called." He chuckled. "You run a tighter ship than our HOA." He tipped 2 fingers from his brow and crossed back to his yard. The cicadas started up, drilling the hour toward evening. Inside the kitchen held the same quiet it always did when workdays ran late. I set the envelope on the counter. Thayer came through first, loosened his tie knot with 2 fingers, and set his keys down near the fruit bowl. His eyes found the HOA logo, then flicked to me. He didn't touch it. Celine followed a bag of oranges braced on her hip. She slid the envelope under a home and garden magazine. "Junk mail," she said lightly. I rinsed the sink, wiped it dry in slow circles until the steel shone. Then I picked up the magazine and set it aside. The envelope went back on top, title line, facing the ceiling light. No lecture. Just gravity. "I'll start the grill." Thayer said too fast and escaped toward the patio. I tucked the packet under my arm, carried it to my room, and fed the pages through my scanner. HOA owner of record Q3 PDF slid onto my desktop like a bead into place. I logged the moment in my ledger date time HOA roster names record owner me. Witness porch neighbor. I slipped the originals into house archive behind the taxes tab. When I came back, the kitchen smelled of lighter fluid and lemon pepper. Friday nights, I volunteer at St. Andrews when I can. Work shows character without anyone having to talk about it. I drove over as the sky held that last strip of pink you only get after a dry week. The fellowship hall was already alive. Aluminum pans crinkled the service bell, dinged in short hops, and somebody laughed big from the doorway as teens hauled folding chairs. Mrs. Clark handed me a laminated badge and a clipboard. "Evening, Eudora. Can you check the desserts table and mark the gluten-free?" She talks like a woman who has gotten things done for 50 years and expects the same from you. On it, I said, sliding a pan of brownies so the label showed. I love that room, the way work moves down a line, each person making the next one's job easier. Mrs. Clark tapped the clipboard with her pen. We're matching Thanksgiving delivery addresses to volunteers. You're still the owner on Maple Ridge, right? Yes. I answered, simple as a door hinge. Thought so. She initialed the box beside my name. 2 volunteers passed behind her, both catching the word owner, both nodding the way people nod when a puzzle piece locks. That's the thing about records, the world reflects them back to you in places that aren't your kitchen. No fanfare, just alignment. We served baked ziti and green salad and the kind of buttered rolls that make men close their eyes a second. A boy in a team hoodie carried 2 plates to his grandmother. I wiped the serving line, refilled the lemonade, and felt the steadiness you feel when the floor holds. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Celine, "Did Gideon hand you something? HOA is messy lately." I typed, "Yes, minutes and dues." I handled it. Her typing dots appeared, jittered, vanished. Nothing else came through. I set the phone face down by the napkins and kept moving the line forward. By 8, the hall was a sweet mess, the good kind. We scraped pans, clicked lids onto storage tubs, and tied bags. When the bell chimed, once more final and small, I peeled off my gloves and signed out. Mrs. Clark squeezed my elbow. "You have a steady hand, Eudora. See you Sunday." On the drive home, porch lights blinked on one by one, like the neighborhood agreeing on something. Thayer's grill hissed wetly when I pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see Celine balancing 2 plates at the counter, careful not to drip. In the kitchen, the HOA envelope sat where I'd left it. I set my keys down, poured a glass of water, and let the cold ease behind my ribs. Celine didn't look at the packet. Gideon overthinks everything she said more to the room than to me. Maybe I said, but paper is plain. She folded a napkin, smoothed it twice. Thayer came in with the last of the chicken. We ate with the easy noises that happen when everyone's tired. Nobody mentioned minutes or rosters. We compared notes on traffic. We asked Lumen in the group chat about her midterm. Normal holds its shape when you let it. After dishes, I walked the envelope back to my room and scanned the dues notice too. Paper doesn't require your feelings, only your attention. I labeled a second file not because I needed it, but because someday someone might ask, and I like being the kind of woman who can say, "Here." On the porch, the air had cooled to something honest. A cicada drilled relentless and small. In the quiet, my phone lit with a new email from Corbin Appraiser, confirmed for Monday, 9:00 a.m. Name H. Kalisher. Please have maintenance log available. I turned off the porch light and held the phone a second longer than necessary. Monday would bring a man with a clipboard who did not care about family narratives. He would ask for the record owner, and I would answer him with the same voice I'd used all day. Inside, I slid tonight's notes into the ledger, closed the cover, and set it beside the manila folder. The house wasn't loud about it, but it knew. It knew who mended the screens, who paid the storm deductible, who kept the keys in a dish by the door. The porch went dark. The appointment settled and held. At 9 sharp, the doorbell gave one polite ring. A man in a navy polo stood on the porch with a tablet strapped to his hand. "Good morning. I'm Mr. Haynes, state-licensed appraiser. May I speak with the record owner?" He didn't look past me down the hallway. I nodded, felt a small lift under my ribs, and opened the door wide for sunlight and authority both. "Shoes off," he asked. "Please," I said. The house offered its usual greeting. HVAC hum, a single click from the refrigerator cinnamon from last night's toast faint in the air. I handed him a slim packet from my folder. Scope is first floor systems and attic with me present. Yard is fine, the side gate sticks unless you lift. He scanned the cover. Owner Eudora Hawthorne. He read it the way clerks confirm a birth date. The laser measurer chirped as he shot the living room and made a quick note. Facts moved forward like a quiet train. Celine appeared with 2 mugs. Coffee. "We've handled the taxes lately," she said, breezy as a weather report. Mr. Haynes glanced over his tablet. "I didn't change volume. All documents are in my packet." We kept walking. Hallway. Guest bath. Laundry. He photographed appliance labels while I pointed to shutoff valves, GFCI tests, and the water heater sticker with its date. In the kitchen, he measured wall runs and the island. Quartz installed. 2009, I said. Invoice is in maintenance tab 3. He nodded. The laser beeped again, small nails fixing truth to the studs. We pulled the attic ladder. It creaked the way honest wood does. I steadied the rail and went up first. Blown-in insulation R38, I said, tapping the depth marker. I pointed at the service tags on the air handler. HVAC serviced in May and last October. Filters monthly. He photographed the labels. "Your records are thorough," he said. Outside the grass, held the line where I'd edged it Saturday. Gideon lifted 2 fingers from his porch. Mr. Haynes checked grading fence and the hairline in the driveway that never grew after the drought 3 summers back. I unlocked the side gate and lifted. It clicked cleanly. At the dining table, he explained comps and adjustments in the steady tone of someone who calms square-foot debates. "I won't quote numbers on site," he said. "You'll receive seller's disclosures via DocuSign. Please sign as legal owner and attach material updates." My phone chimed. The form already carried my name, Seller Eudora Hawthorne. I reviewed attached the 2016 roof receipt, last winter's plumber invoice from the freeze, and the HOA roster page that prints my ownership in bold. I signed. A second later, the system stamped the time IP and a hash string, long as a railroad proof that doesn't argue it endures. I forwarded the packet to Corbin Wells. Thayer hovered in the hallway, pretending to study a thermostat. "Why did it come to your email?" he asked when the appraiser stepped out to measure the porch. "Because the deed did," I said. He shifted and found something else to look at. We finished in the yard. Mr. Haynes thanked me. "Makes my job cleaner." "You'd be surprised how many folks can't find a single receipt." "I like paper," I said. He smiled and left with the professional neutrality of a man who sees 3 living rooms a day. When the engine noise thinned, my phone rang. Corbin's voice was warm and businesslike. "Disclosure packet looks clean." Title confirmed again. "Photography, Wednesday at 10. Likely live by Friday. Offers could show Sunday night." I wrote the dates into my ledger and underlined them. In the kitchen, a drawer rattled. Celine's voice floated the way steam drifts before a kettle whistles. "We should have a family discussion tonight," she said. "We can discuss facts. No edge, no sugar. Just the shape of the table we'd be sitting at. Around noon, I walk the rooms the way you walk a field. You plan to leave eyes on corners, hand on trim." I wiped a print off the microwave and straightened the mail so the top line didn't shout. In my room, I printed the DocuSign confirmation and slid it behind the certified deed. Paper over paper until the story layered like growth rings in a tree. By late afternoon, the house settled into soft mechanical sounds. The HVAC hummed, the fridge clicked. I brewed tea and carried the mug to the patio. Gideon mowed 2 strips and cut the engine to wave at a delivery truck. Life went on the way it does when you keep the maintenance up. Inside, a fresh email blinked. "Thank you for signing copy attached. Logistics not gloating." I filed it and closed the laptop. For a minute, the only sound was ice easing in my glass and a bird fussing at the fence. Tonight they would want to talk about feelings. I had a ledger, a folder, and a chain of emails that told a cleaner truth. The house would answer for me if I let it. At a certain age, you learn silence can be an instrument, not a retreat. I rinsed my cup, set it in the rack, and left the folder in my chair. My place marked pages ready. When the clock reached 7, we would sit. They could offer opinions. I would offer records. "We can discuss facts," I said again to the stainless sink that showed my face without distortion. The HVAC kept its agreeable note, and somewhere outside, a dog gave one soft bark like a gavel struck once. From the hallway, Celine's phone buzzed. An email landed and went still. I dried my hands. The tab caught the light deed like a lighthouse for what's next. At 7 on the dot, the chair scraped, and I set my folder in my chair first, the way you mark a place before you take it. The air return kicked on. The house breathed, even if no one else did. Celine sat to my left, Thayer to my right, Bram across. Lumen slipped in last and took the corner hands around a mug from St. Andrews. Celine pushed a single sheet across the wood. "So we're clear," she said. "Effective next month, rent increases to cover taxes and insurance. If unpaid, we'll have to place you in a senior facility." Thayer nodded as if he'd practiced it. Bram said, "It's fair, Mom. It's just numbers." I took my pen and dated the bottom right corner today's date time and the word presented. The click sounded louder than anyone's breath. "I do not consent to rent terms," I said steady, "all future communication by email." I slid a card with my P.O. box and alias onto the sheet. Lumen set my mug by my elbow. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. A soft chime from the foyer cut the air. Thayer's thumb moved on his phone. The smart lock blinked amber, then blue. "Security update," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I opened my app. The audit log showed temporary code revoke user Thayer. timestamped to the minute. I tapped restore and took screenshots before action after. Do not modify my access again, I said. He colored along his neck and swallowed his reply. We've been covering you for months, Bram said, leaning forward. Taxes are up. Insurance is crazy. We're drowning here. Celine folded her arms and added, this is us trying to keep the house afloat. I opened the folder and laid 3 statements in a row, headers facing them like small billboards county tax receipt paid from my account insurance auto pay, tied to my bank contractor checks with my signature and the word cleared stamped across the back. You have been reimbursed from my funds, I said. The refrigerator clicked on and sounded like a witness. Celine's jaw tightened. We fronted some of it during the spring, she said. I keep records, I said. Spring too. I flipped one more page, March auto draft, April receipt. No adjectives, just the math. This is getting adversarial, Celine said. This is getting accurate, I answered. We can stay there. I pulled a final letter and set it where their eyes would land, Ortega, elder law, on heavy white paper. Per counsel, I said no conversations about placement without my written consent. House matters are to be addressed to the owner of record. The letterhead did the loud talking. The room reorganized itself around it. Lumen's hand touched my wrist for a second, then she checked the printer as if to say she could run copies if anyone needed proof. Do you want me to print anything, she asked? Not yet, I said. She left a sticky note by my folder that read, I'm here, and sipped her tea like an adult, holding the middle of a storm. Celine tried a new lane. We just need predictability, she said. If you could commit to a monthly figure, I will pay what I owe as owner, I said, and nothing that contradicts that. I slid the rent paper back across the grain. Email only. The smart lock chimed once more, some delayed sync settling down, and we all looked toward the sound. I recorded the time in my notes. Thayer adjusted his watch band. Photography is disruptive, he said. We need notice. You have it, I answered. Wednesday at 10. Corbin sent the confirmation. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. Bram tapped the edge of a statement. If you sell, where do you think you'll go? I have options, I said, and a car that knows how to get there. Mom Celine said the word stretch thin. You can't just, I can, I said, and I will do it on paper. I gathered the documents into a neat stack and slid them back into the manila. The room cooled. Relief for me, discomfort for them. Lumen rose and carried plates to the sink. Water covered the noise of whatever Selena wasn't saying. I wrote 2 lines in my ledger rent. Ultimatum declined. Lock change, reversed evidence captured. Selena reached for the rent sheet. We'll draft something more formal, I said. Send it to my email. I stood. I won't debate feelings, I added. We'll proceed by record. In the hallway, my phone vibrated again. Photography. Wednesday, 10:00 a.m. The preview read. I felt the house square its shoulders the way a person does before a picture. I slipped the folder under my arm. Behind me, chairs scraped back. Lumen clicked the dishwasher closed. Bram muttered about dinner plans. Thayer stared at the lock. Celine gathered her hair into a knot and let it fall again. At my door, I turned enough to see them as they were grown worried and not used to the papers telling them no. Good night, I said. No echo answered, just the air return, starting up faithful as ever. In my room, I filed the screenshots, the statements, and the letter into House Archive, then drew a box around today in the ledger. Outside, a car passed base low lights, soft on the blinds. Inside, the printer woke for a second and went back to sleep. My phone hummed once more with the calendar reminder, and the house felt like it had already chosen its next owner. I turned off the lamp and let the quiet hold. Tomorrow I would clear the kitchen table and lay out the disclosures, one beside another, the way you line up ingredients before you cook soon. The tripod waited in the living room when I came down with a basket of folded throws. Morning light stepped across the oak floor. Corbin arrived 2 minutes early, neutral smile blue, lockbox in hand. The photographer, quiet, soft, tapped the legs level and raised the camera. I'd cleared the counters last night, wrapped family pictures, slid them into a bin. The house looked like itself, only tidier. Celine's door opened. "We're not comfortable with photos today," she said. Thayer stood behind her, arms folded. Corbin checked the listing packet on his tablet, my signature deed copy authorization. "We're proceeding with the owner of record," he said. I held the door for the photographer and let the moment pass. The shutter began to whisper. Kitchen first quartz flashing the south windows bright. He asked for upgrade dates. I handed the one-page summary I'd made roof 2016 HVAC service spring water heater last fall. He nodded and moved room to room, glancing at serial numbers I'd photographed. Upstairs, the attic ladder I'd oiled didn't complain. The laser measurer beeped. On the porch, Corbin crouched by the jamb. The lockbox beeped alive. He shouldered the yard sign and stepped it into the lawn. Lumen watched from the sidewalk in a college hoodie. She gave me the smallest nod. At noon, my phone pinged. Corbin live. Then the pings multiplied, 2 showing requests, an agent note about roof age, another thanking us for clean disclosures. I answered with dates and file names. In the kitchen, Selene scrolled and said nothing. Thayer walked the driveway. During the first showing, I took the porch swing ledger in my lap. Through the open window, I heard strangers say the light was kind and the yard easy. A woman asked if the attic had decking. Yes, I called through to Corbin. Buyers came and went in quiet pairs. The house behaved. So did I. Mid-afternoon, a title officer called. Ms. Hawthorne, we received a request to place a freeze on the listing from a non-owner occupant. We've responded with deed verification. All further communications will be with you. A minute later, the HOA echoed the same in my inbox. I filed both in House Archive under Today Market. Celine stood at the island and watched me type. "We're just trying to make sure nothing reckless happens," she said. "Nothing reckless is happening," I answered. "This is paperwork." The photographer finished with exterior dusk shots. Corbin gathered his gear, then sat at the table and opened his folder. "You'll likely see activity tonight," he said. "We priced to invite." He slid a printed MLS sheet across. My legal name sat where it belonged. By evening, offers began to collect like tidy envelopes. One at list with a long option, one at list with fewer demands, and one above asking with a shorter timeline and a strong lender letter. Corbin outlined terms. I asked about appraisal addenda, days to close proof of funds, leaseback flexibility. He smiled. "Thought you might want a few weeks after funding." "I move at my pace anyway," I said, but I circled leaseback optional in blue ink. Through the window, Lumen waved once and disappeared down the sidewalk. Inside, Thayer rattled a drawer, then let it go. Selene paced phone in her hand, no call made. I didn't fill the silence. Business has its own grammar. Learn the punctuation or keep tripping over commas. Another ping, a buyer's agent asking for confirmation on ownership after conflicting statements from an occupant. Corbin answered with the deed copy and the DocuSign hash from our disclosures. I added the same packet to a new email thread labeled Agent Requests Round 1. Facts moved. We stacked the offers and compared them like fabrics under different lights. The above ask came from a nurse and a teacher with a conventional loan. The second required concessions I didn't plan to make. The third was tidy but slow. Counter the strongest, I said. Ask for proof of funds, 21-day close, and a 3-week leaseback at $1. Corbin laughed softly. The dollar will make them smile. He typed the counter while I set out 2 mugs. No speech about legacy, no plea about gratitude. I'd done my job, kept records, kept the roof sound. Before he left, Corbin clipped the lockbox key back to his belt and looked toward the hallway where Selena had paused. "Showings will be by appointment," he said. "The owner will receive confirmations." When the door shut, the porch light clicked on by timer. I stood there and read my own name where it mattered. Inside my phone vibrated with the outgoing counteroffer soft in my hand, hard on the deadline. I pressed save on the ledger note, then wrote it by hand, too. Celine came to the doorway and watched the light halo the sign. "What if we ask the buyers for a delay?" she said. "If they accept, I'll honor the dates we agree to," I said. "If they don't, I'll honor those." She nodded once and retreated. The refrigerator clicked. The house cleared its throat. I turned off the kitchen lamp and left the porch light on for 1 more hour. I brewed fresh coffee while Corbin summarized each offer again slower, so nothing hid in the margins. We spoke in numbers and dates, not wounds. I asked if the above-ask buyers could verify down payment funds within 24 hours and whether their lender ordered the appraisal on day 1. He said yes on both if we wrote it clean. I thought of every bill I had paid in this house and how none of those checks had ever needed an audience. Respect is the quiet math that balances, or it isn't respect at all. By 9, the counteroffer left my phone with a quiet buzz and a firm deadline. I set the device screen down and listened to the evening hold steady. The sign outside didn't move. It didn't have to. My phone dinged at 6:58 a.m. The subject line was one word: accepted. I poured coffee and opened the contract, tracing the close date with my finger, like a road I'd already driven in my head. The day felt narrower and kinder. Outside the porch was the same old wood, but the air had that crisp edge that says a season means what it says. Corbin pulled up at 8 with a folder I could have carried myself. He laid out copies on the kitchen table and pointed with a capped pen. "Notice to occupants sale and access," he said. "Inspection tomorrow, 2 to 4 appraiser recheck, held if needed, final walkthrough 48 hours before close. I'll post one here and you keep one for the archive." I signed owner of record where my name waited, then clipped the extra under a magnet on the fridge. I carried 3 more notices down the hall. This is the schedule I told Celine, then Thayer, then Bram. No lecture, no apology, just dates and the expectation grown people can read. Lumen wrote the times on a sticky and tucked it into her planner. No one signed an acknowledgement, so I took photos of each handoff and added them to a folder named Delivery 10 a.m. Selene followed me back to the kitchen. "We can cancel the inspection," she said, voice flat, but hopeful the way people sound when they're fishing for a loophole. Thayer crossed his arms. Bram paced a 3-step track by the island. "Clause 12A," I said, tapping the packet. "Access is coordinated through title and me. The lockbox is active. Tomorrow stands." At 10:30, Ms. Patel, the buyer's agent, called from a car with a turn signal clicking in the background. "We're confirmed for 2 p.m. tomorrow," she said. "Any quirks the inspector should know. Attic ladder creaks but holds," I said. "HVAC serviced in spring. Cereals are on the summary. Crawl space is clean. I'll be present quiet." "Bless you," she said. "You keep records like a librarian. Title emailed at 11. Earnest money received. Option period begins today." A receipt PDF sat there with a hash string like a fence post sunk deep. I printed it, highlighted the numbers, and slid it behind the deed. Money has a way of making schedules behave. At lunch, the utility portal pinged, "Termination request submitted." I took screenshots, request ID, timestamp IP. I clicked cancel, added 2-factor authentication, then set a note on the account owner authorization required. Do not alter. Another screenshot. All 3 went into House Archive under Utilities Attempt. I did not ask who had tried. I let the paper ask and answer for me. Afternoon light slanted across the living room. I wrapped 3 frames in old dish towels, my wedding photo Lumen at 5 with a strawberry grin and a Polaroid of the lake at Possum Kingdom. Boxes got labeled "Keep Apartment" in a hand that didn't shake. The printer whirred as I updated the move checklist and ticked off Keys warranties forwarding. The work wasn't heavy, it was exact. Corbin texted at 2, appraisal recheck, likely waived based on comps. We stay ready anyway. I replied with a thumb up and added the note to my ledger, "Recheck if called docs ready." Outside, the sign nudged from a gust. I walked out, straightened it, and felt the ground steady under my shoes. By late afternoon, Gideon raised 2 fingers from his porch. The mail truck rattled away. Inside, Selena stared at the fridge like the magnet might loosen if she stared long enough. It didn't. Thayer opened the pantry, closed it again. Bram hovered near the hallway, then disappeared without a word. Lumen studied at the table and underlined a date in her calendar, then slid the pen toward me. I didn't need it. Ms. Patel pinged again. At 5, inspector confirmed, "See you tomorrow. Buyers appreciate your clarity." I sent back the gate code and reminded her about the attic strap. Then I set a fresh notepad on the kitchen table and wrote one sentence at the top: "We will proceed by record." In the quiet that follows a day that chooses its own ending, I brewed tea and walked the rooms like a farmer the night before harvest. The little fixes I'd made over the years stood at attention. The hinge that no longer squealed. The outlet I'd replaced the window sash that now closed with 2 fingers. This house had always answered me when I asked the question correctly. Celine stepped into the doorway. "What happens if the buyers ask for a delay?" she said. "Then we read the contract and answer with dates," I said. "If they don't, we meet the ones we have." She glanced at the notice again as if numbers might soften. "You could give us more time," she said. Not quite a plea, not quite a demand. "I've given time," I said, not unkind. "Now I'm giving notice." She exhaled and nodded without looking at me. We stood like that for a beat, 2 people who knew where the edges were and that the edges would hold. I cleaned the sink, set the cup upside down, and checked the porch lock. The sky over Keller turned that deep Texas blue you can't fake. My phone buzzed with a final email. Title Lench escrow opening package complete. Target close date confirmed. I started and closed the screen. The refrigerator hummed. The magnet did its simple job without ceremony. I turned off the kitchen light and left the hallway lamp on like I always have when a house is in motion. The sign outside caught the last line of sun and let it go. I set the notepad square in the center. By 2 o'clock, the inspector's tool bag thumped onto my porch square and heavy as a lunch pail. Ms. Patel pulled in behind him with a clipboard and a calm wave. I opened the door and pointed to the notice on the fridge and the lockbox code sheet signed by me. "Everything you need is posted," I said. The air in the house felt like a held breath and smelled of lemon oil and last night's tea. The inspector, licensed polite all edges filed by years of strangers' attics, introduced himself. "Standard scope," he said. "Roof systems, outlets, attic. Questions go through your agents." Corbin nodded. Ms. Patel added, "Understood." I stepped back to the porch swing with my notepad. He started in the kitchen, GFCI trips, fine, reset, clean. The laser measurer chirped against the breakfast nook wall. In the hallway, his camera snapped and stamped the time. In the attic, he called down, "Insulation depth is adequate." The HVAC hummed like a steady dog. Nothing dramatic. House's report. At 2:37, the lights went out. It wasn't a flicker, the house went quiet. He clicked his flashlight track to the garage and opened the breaker box. He photographed the panel with the timestamp. Main breaker down. Ms. Patel wrote the minute in her notes, power interrupted during inspection. He lifted the lever with a soft click. The kitchen returned to life. We continued. Laundry outlets tested within range. The drain line was slow after heavy weekends. "Note it," I said. He nodded. In the hall, where the kids' photos used to hang, the primary bedroom door was shut. He tried the knob. "Locked," he said. "Will record as inaccessible." He photographed the doorknob and the hallway for context. "I have a key," I said. I turned it and opened the door. The room was neat. The bed, made with corners, I recognized. Ms. Patel stood in the doorway while he crossed to the windows and lifted each sash. They rose smooth. He measured the closet and checked outlets. He took the picture again, this time with the door open. Celine appeared in the archway. "You can't go in there," she said, chin toward the stairs, as if the house were a person who could be told no. Bram paced. Thayer checked his phone. Corbin pointed to the fridge without raising his voice. "Access is scheduled and posted. We'll be brief." I stepped out to the yard and let the Bermuda grass hold my weight while they decided whether rules apply. Mr. Collins' voice drifted through the open windows. Attic ladder creaks. No structural red flags. Recommend GFCI in garage. Recalc at flashing. His camera beeped and stamped each note with time. He moved like someone who knows facts travel farther than raised voices. In the garage, he paused by the breaker, again snapped the panel map, then the lever positions. "I document configuration at close," he said. Ms. Patel photographed the notice on the fridge, the signature, the dates, the magnet. "For the file," she said. We gathered at the dining table at 3:58. He stacked his tools and spoke evenly. Summary: garage. GFCI replacement recommended. Minor caulk at roof flashing. No life safety failures. 2 access interferences, main breaker tripped at 237 primary bedroom locked, both resolved. Photos attached. He clicked stop on a voice memo and saved it. Buyer requests a small credit instead of repairs. Ms. Patel said phone open with an amendment template. She glanced at Corbin. He looked at me. "Credit is fine," I said. "We keep the timeline." She typed sent and her car printer chirped in the driveway. She returned with a warm page. I signed at the edge of the table where the wood has a notch from a Thanksgiving ham years ago. Ms. Patel signed. Corbin initialed receipt. Celine hovered in the archway, chewing her lip. "This is our home," she said to no one in particular. "It has been," I said, steady. "It is also my asset. Today, it did its job." Bram stopped pacing. Thayer set his phone down, then picked it up again. The room learned what posted dates mean. By 5, the house was quiet except for the refrigerator's hum and a cicada past the fence. My inbox received its flurry inspection-complete PDF with photos of the breaker lever and the door plate, the signed amendment, and an email from title timeline unchanged, Walkthrough T2. I printed the report and slipped it behind the deed, then added 2 yellow sticky tabs to the fridge calendar, one at Walkthrough, one at closing. Lumen wrote, "Bring brownies for the movers," on a corner of Saturday. At dusk, the porch swing moved slowly. Gideon raised 2 fingers from across the street and didn't ask. I set my keys in the ceramic dish by the door, the blue one Margaret found at a church sale, and drew a line through today's square on the calendar. We hadn't won a fight. We kept an appointment. Inside, I powered my phone down. The house settled around me like a coat that still fits. In the hallway mirror, I saw the notepad from last night and the sentence at the top. "We will proceed by record." The words had carried me through worse. The night pressed its ear to the windows and listened. I let it. Some stories don't need retelling once the paper understands them. Today, it did. Before bed, I set the inspector's summary beside my ledger and traced each line like Lumen's spelling lists. Facts are quiet company. They don't flatter or shout. They point you forward. I laid out 2 envelopes, keys, and forwarding address and a strip of blue tape, ready by morn. The lockbox woke up with a tiny beep that carried across the porch like a bird call. 4:30 late lights slanting through the oak. Miss Patel keyed in the code. The buyers stepped in behind her, a married couple with cautious smiles, and Corbin nodded once to me. I stood by the fridge where the notice still hung under a magnet shaped like Texas. No speeches. The house could do the talking. They moved room to room, gentle hands, careful eyes. In the garage, Ms. Patel tapped the new GFCI and checked it with a tester. The 2 green lights went steady. On the roofline photo from her phone, she zoomed in on the fresh caulk along the flashing. "All items addressed. No delay," she said. The buyers lingered in the sunny back room where afternoon light lands like a blanket. They looked at each other and exhaled. We initialed the walkthrough form at the dining table where so many birthdays had crowded plates and elbows. Respectful adult, the way business should go when paper is clear. Title was 2 exits away. In the conference room, the escrow officer set a neat stack in front of me. Deed settlement statement, Alta wire instructions. The fluorescent hum was dull, but the ink was sharp. I read every line. My signature moved like a slow river measured no ripples. The officer stamped, slid the next page, stamped again. "Recording will post within the hour," she said. Corbin sat across from me, pen stilled. "You did everything right," he said, not loudly, like he was remarking on a well-built fence. We finished, shook hands, and stepped into the parking lot heat that smells like hot tires and distant grass. I had one hand on my purse strap when my phone buzzed. Subject line in bold recording confirmed Tarrant County. Right beneath it, a second line, funds received, wires dispersing. The buyers stood to the side with Ms. Patel. I walked over open screen in my palm the way you carry proof and mercy at the same time. Recording confirmed, Ms. Patel repeated after reading. I slid both key rings, front door and side gate, across to her. Possession delivered upon recording, I said. No flourish, no edge. The law doesn't need either. On Maple Ridge, the porch light had already clicked on for evening when we pulled up. The buyer's car eased to the curb. Gideon looked over from his mailbox and raised 2 fingers our language for good fences and fair play. Corbin checked the yard sign, then stepped aside as Miss Patel brought the couple up the walk. They were almost to the steps when Selene came out fast. Thayer behind her, Bram a few paces off with his jaw set. You can't just hand this over, Selene said, fingers tight on the rail. This is our family home. Miss Patel held the recording email open. Title has recorded, she said softly. Like you tell someone the train has already left and the next one's tomorrow. Corbin angled the walk-through form so the signatures showed in the porch light. Possession transferred upon recording, he added. Bram muttered something about rights and fairness and years. I looked at my daughter, not past her. It's done, I said, not unkind. Wind moved through the pecan leaves. The moment tried to swell, and then it didn't. Paper had crowded it out. Lumen came down the hallway with a ribbon in her hand, the spare key knotted to it like a charm. She pressed it into my palm and closed my fingers around it, then opened them again as if reminding me to release. I took the lake photo from my tote, the one at Possum Kingdom with a tiny boat in the corner, and placed it in hers. When you feel crowded, I told her, look for the open water. Her eyes shone. Sunday calls, she said. On the first ring, I answered. We squeezed hands, a promise traveling both directions. I went in once more because endings deserve a last look. The house smelled faintly of lemon and dust, and something like vanilla from a candle long burned down. I ran my fingertips along the banister where a dent remembers a Halloween pirate sword. In the kitchen, I straightened the yard sign brochure on the counter out of habit, then left a note with the utility account information and a line that felt right as a benediction: utilities transfer complete. Be well. The ceramic key dish was empty, strangely light. I listened for a minute to nothing at all, then pulled the door shut until the latch caught. On the sidewalk, Selene stood as if the porch were ashore and everything past it was tide. She didn't look at me. I didn't make her. Thayer put a hand on her shoulder and let it fall when she didn't respond. Bram paced once up the walk and back down again, the shape of someone who hates losing more than he loves fairness. The buyers waited with the patience of people who had done their paperwork and trusted a system older than any one family's story. They nodded to me. I nodded back. Ms. Patel tucked the key rings safely into a small envelope and handed it to the wife, who held it like an egg. We stood like that for a few breaths, neighbors, kin agents, strangers woven together by a small parcel number and the weight of a roof. Then the buyers walked inside their new home. The lock clicked once. Nothing angry, just the sound a chapter makes when it knows how to end. My apartment was quiet and cool. I set 3 frames on the bookshelf. Margaret in a sun hat, Lumen at 5 with jam at the corner of her mouth, the lake. The kettle ticked as it settled after boiling. An email slid into view, settlement statement attached. I downloaded it, printed a clean copy at the community printer down the hall, and slid it into a fresh manila envelope labeled with today's date. Old habits are a comfort label. File breathe. I took my tea to the window. Below, someone was grilling on a tiny balcony, and a child squealed at a scooter that wanted to go faster than he did. A train horn layered the evening with something lonesome and ordinary. I touched the ribbon Lumen had used and tied it to the handle of the desk drawer where I keep things I want to remember for the right reasons. People ask what you keep when you let go of a house. Some measure it in equity, some in the echo of footsteps down a hall. I measured it today in a new kind of quiet, the kind that comes after you choose yourself with paperwork instead of apology. I set out a second cup and watched the steam climb, just in case someone I love walked through a new door and needed to talk. On Sunday, when Lumen calls, I will answer on the first ring. We'll talk about classes and brownies and who's bringing the mashed potatoes to Thanksgiving now that the kitchen belongs to other hands. I'll tell her I found a park not far from here with a bench that faces west. We'll make a plan to meet there with paper cups and a bag of pretzels. Tonight, I turn my phone face down and let the apartment learn my breathing. The porch light on Maple Ridge would be shining on other keys, other dinners, other birthdays. That's how streets work, and it's all right. I didn't win a house. I kept myself. Some endings don't roar. They land like a signed page. Here's what I learned. Set boundaries early, keep records, and never trade dignity for peace that isn't real. Quiet is not weakness. It's a strategy. Lean on your hope anchor, that one good hand on your shoulder, and move forward even when family fails you. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever chosen paper over apology? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't say why I'm listening, and if you want more true human stories like this, please subscribe to the channel.